Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is planning a wedding around one single question: do I love this person? For almost the entire 300,000 years humans have existed, that question would have sounded insane. Not because ancient people didn't feel love, they did, but love was never the reason you got married. Marriage wasn't about your heart, it was about your survival, your safety, and your tribe's ability to not go extinct. So today, we're going to answer a question most people have never actually thought about. How did ancient humans really choose who to marry? And once you hear the real answer, you'll never look at a wedding ring the same way again. Before we talk about choosing a partner, we need to rewind further than most people realize. For the earliest hunter gatherer humans, tens of thousands of years ago, something like marriage as we know it didn't fully exist yet. What existed instead were pair bonds, informal and flexible partnerships that could form and dissolve based on the needs of the group. But even in these earliest societies, one thing was already true. Who you paired with was rarely just about you. It was about the survival of a very small, very fragile group of people who depended on each other for everything: food, protection, childcare, defense against predators and rival groups. In a band of 20 or 30 people, every relationship had ripple effects. If two people paired off badly, it could create tension that threatened the whole group's cohesion. So even in the earliest stages of human history, choosing a partner was never a private decision. It was a group decision, whether it was said out loud or not. Now here's where it gets interesting. As human groups grew larger and more organized, particularly once agriculture appeared roughly 10 to 12,000 years ago, marriage started to become something much more calculated. Farming changed everything. For the first time, humans had land, stored grain, livestock, and property that could be inherited. And the moment humans had something worth protecting, marriage transformed from a personal partnership into a strategic alliance. Think about it like this. If your neighboring family had more land, more animals, or more warriors, marrying into that family wasn't romantic, it was insurance. It secured peace between two groups. It merged resources. It created obligations that made betrayal costly for both sides. This is why, across nearly every ancient civilization we have records of, from Mesopotamia to ancient Egypt to early China to the tribal societies of pre-colonial Africa to the clans of ancient Europe, marriages between powerful families were arranged, negotiated, and sometimes even written into formal contracts. In ancient Mesopotamia, some of the oldest written legal codes we've ever discovered include detailed rules about marriage contracts, what a family owed another family, what happened if the arrangement fell apart, and who owned what afterward. This wasn't romantic poetry. This was law. Marriage was a legal and economic transaction before it was ever considered an emotional one. And this pattern didn't just apply to royalty. Even ordinary farming families used marriage the same way, just on a smaller scale. Two families combining land, labor, and protection. So if it wasn't the couple deciding, who was? In most ancient societies, the answer is simple. Parents, elders, or tribal leaders made the decision, and the criteria they used had almost nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with value. Here's what ancient family leaders were actually evaluating when they chose a partner for their child: health and fertility, because in a world with no modern medicine and brutal infant mortality rates, a partner's ability to survive childbirth and produce healthy children wasn't a bonus, it was the entire point. Family reputation and alliances, because was this family trustworthy? Did they have enemies? Would this marriage bring protection or conflict? Economic contribution, because could this person work the land, hunt, weave, trade, or manage a household efficiently? Since in a subsistence economy, a lazy or weak partner could threaten an entire family's survival. And social status, because marrying up could elevate an entire family's position, while marrying down could be seen as a loss of standing. Notice what's missing from that list: personality, humor, chemistry, shared interests. Those things weren't ignored completely, but they were, at best, a lucky bonus, not a requirement. In many ancient cultures, the couple didn't meet each other until the wedding day itself. Their entire relationship began not with a spark of attraction, but with a transaction their parents had already completed months or even years earlier. Here's something that surprises almost everyone. In most ancient societies, marriage had an actual price tag. Two systems dominated the ancient world, and they tell you everything about how marriage was really viewed. The first is bride price, where the groom's family paid the bride's family in cattle, goods, land, or labor. This was common throughout much of ancient Africa, parts of Asia, and among many pastoral societies. It wasn't seen as buying a person exactly, it was compensation to the bride's family for the loss of her labor and the children she would now produce for another household. The second is dowry, the reverse system, where the bride's family paid the groom's family, common in parts of ancient India, Greece, and Rome. A dowry functioned almost like an insurance policy, ensuring the bride would be treated well since the groom's family had already received a financial benefit from taking her in. In both systems, a person's marriageability could be measured in literal currency. A woman from a wealthy family with a large dowry could secure a far more desirable husband. A man from a family that could offer a large bride price could secure a wife from a more prestigious family. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths about ancient marriage. For most of human history, marrying someone was closer to negotiating a business deal than falling in love. Now, before you assume ancient humans were emotionless robots arranging their lives like spreadsheets, that's not quite right either. Love absolutely existed. Ancient poetry, songs, and letters from civilizations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and later Rome and Greece are full of romantic longing, desire, heartbreak, and devotion. Humans have always felt love. That part of us hasn't changed in thousands of years. What was different is the role love played. In most ancient societies, love was something that could develop after marriage, not something required before it. Many cultures actually believed this was the healthier order of operations, that duty and commitment came first, and affection would grow naturally once two people built a life together. In some ancient societies, particularly among certain hunter-gatherer groups with more flexible social structures, individuals did have somewhat more freedom to choose partners based on attraction and compatibility, especially if there wasn't major property or status at stake. So it's not accurate to say love-based choice never existed anywhere. It existed at the margins, especially among people with less to lose. But as societies became more complex, more hierarchical, and more centered on wealth and land ownership, personal choice in marriage shrank dramatically for most people. The more a family had to protect, the less say their children had in who they married. So when did marrying for love become normal? This is the part that shocks people the most. The idea of marrying primarily for love and romantic compatibility is, historically speaking, incredibly recent. Most historians point to a major cultural shift beginning around the 1700s and 1800s in parts of Europe and North America, tied to the rise of the middle class, increased individual property rights, and new philosophical ideas about personal happiness and self-determination. Before this shift, even in societies where romantic love was celebrated in stories and poetry, it was widely considered separate from, and sometimes even in conflict with, the practical business of marriage. Once people had more personal financial independence and weren't as dependent on their extended family's alliances for survival, marriage slowly transformed into something centered on individual choice and emotional connection. So here's the wild part. The version of marriage most people alive today consider normal, choosing your own partner based on love, is a relatively modern invention. For roughly 95% of human history, it wasn't how marriage worked at all. So why does this matter? Because it reveals something uncomfortable but important. The way we experience relationships today is not some universal human default. It's the product of very specific, very recent economic and cultural conditions. For nearly the entire span of human existence, marriage was a survival strategy first, a social contract second, and a romance a distant third, if it factored in at all. The fact that we now expect marriage to satisfy our emotional needs, our sense of identity, and our romantic desires all at once is actually a very new and very demanding expectation, one our ancestors never had to live up to. It also explains why arranged marriage traditions still exist today in parts of the world. They're not a strange historical relic. In many ways, they're the original system, and the marry for love model is the outlier. None of this means ancient people didn't experience deep connection, loyalty, or genuine affection with their partners. Many clearly did. It just means that connection wasn't the starting point. It was something built over time, often out of necessity. So the next time you think about what marriage should look like, remember this. For almost all of human history, the version you're picturing didn't exist. Marriage was never really about the two people standing at the altar. It was about the two families, two futures, and sometimes two entire communities standing behind them. Ancient humans didn't marry for love. They married for survival, and somehow, in the middle of all that calculation, love still found a way in anyway. If this video made you look at relationships differently, hit like and subscribe because this channel is all about uncovering the hidden, uncomfortable truths of how ancient humans actually lived. And if you want to know what happened after the wedding, how ancient couples actually lived, fought, and stayed together, let me know in the comments because that might be the next video.